Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Wood with Draft Digital. I'm excited to have Zoe York with me today. Hi, Zoe.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Zoe is primarily, you write mostly romance, right?
Yeah, like exclusively romance.
Exclusively romance. You're a USA Today bestseller like many, many times. And
13 times, I think. 14.
third, that's awesome. Congratulations. And you've been with us, like, I feel like since the beginning. Like, I remember reaching out to you just as I was starting at Draft Digital. So excited to like talk to you today. We've met a couple of times in person at different conferences. I was trying to think, was RWA New York the last time we hung out in person?
I think so. Yeah, last summer.
I believe so, yeah. So hopefully we'll all get back to the conference circuit when all this is over with soon. We hope it's soon. But yeah, so really wanted to talk to you today. You're an author who has been around quite a while and just slowly but surely building up your audience. You write in series. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about that. Like, why did you choose to write in series? What benefits have you gained from writing in series?
Yeah. So I write in series because other authors who knew better than me when I started told me about that trick. Like,
Yeah.
because I listened to other people. My first book was a standalone when I first wrote it. And I was warned that, I mean, it was true in 2013, and it's very much true in 2020, that a standalone contemporary romance is a very hard sell because it's a huge marketplace. I think
Yes.
that when I started, there were like 500,000 contemporary romances on the Amazon marketplace. And
Wow.
now it's in the middle.
Mm.
Now it's a lot bigger than that. So a series gives you multiple chances to hook people, right?
It
It
does,
builds
yeah.
a brand that yeah, yeah. So
It,
that, I mean,
it,
that's
it's
why, because other people told me.
it's so much easier on the marketing angle when you're not just selling one book, and so you don't have to look at the return on investment as I advertised this one book and I got this much money. If you're doing the book series right and you're getting enough follow through and read through, then every ad is selling 3 or 4 books or more. How long do your series tend to
Yeah.
be?
So I write at least 4 books, 3 or 4 books in a series. But ideally I want 8 books, 10
8
books,
books.
because yeah, there's a different, there's a different optimal length for each retailer. So it's about finding a balance there.
Oh, that's interesting. Like, which ones would you say favor longer series versus shorter series?
Apple is the longest. Like, you can keep producing 8, 10, 12 books in a series, and Apple readers will follow you through that entire thing. I think that Kobo is probably the shortest. My most successful series on Kobo are 4 books long.
That makes sense. Do you, I know you have several pen names, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but within the same pen name, do you connect the series or are your series all standalone?
No, they're all interconnected. Like, well, they're not all. So going forward from this point, my goal is to have all the series interconnect. In the past, I haven't always done that, but I do think that that's a really good idea. Like, there are people like Theodora Taylor does that, and
Yeah,
she weaves them in between subgenres. She's amazing.
that's awesome. I know the first time I remember hearing someone explicitly talk about it was Bella Andre, and just connecting them by
Yeah.
introducing characters ahead of time, and then you're following someone else's love story, but then you're like, oh, I want to see what happens with that character. It's someone you already met, and then when you finally get it, like, you're already a fan. Like, you're already gonna go out and pre-order that book. That's very cool. So pen names, because we find a lot of authors, especially the advice has been all over the place for pen names for the last few years. Let's talk about why you have a pen name. Would you recommend it to someone going forward? What has been your experience with the pen names?
Yeah, so I'm laughing because I have two pen names because the first book that I wrote as Ainsley Booth has an expletive in the title, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to put that out in the world as Zoe.
Right.
And it also has cliffhanger. It was originally published as a 3-book serial that I've since repackaged as one complete story. And so it was just something different enough that I thought, maybe I should try. But I'm really terrible with secrets. So my two pen names aren't secret. Fourth.
Do you maintain a social media for both of them?
Sort of. So I definitely have a website for each of them, a dedicated newsletter for each of them, and a Facebook page for each of them, and an Instagram for each of them, because I think that those are the absolute basics for landing pages where people might search for you.
Right.
I don't have an active Twitter for Ainsley, and I don't have a Facebook profile. Like, Ainsley is not a person you can friend.
Gotcha. We've seen that where you mentioned the cliffhanger part of it really kind of concerned you. It seems like within a genre you have tropes and expectations, and even like the romance subgenres, there are differences in those tropes, and so it can be. I understand exactly why you were kind of scared about that. Having a cliffhanger might have scared off or alienated some of your current readers. Do you find much crossover between the two groups? Like, did it work out?
Yeah, I do see a lot of crossover. Not complete, but a lot of crossover from Zoe to Ainsley. Those readers, as long as they go in with a really
Yeah.
clear expectation that this is not your standard Zoe York, that this is something more over the top, that there might be riskier content, they're there for it. But they want that clear expectation. Like, they don't want that kind of content in Zoe York books. We
Yeah.
all have different moods as readers, right? So I think
Yes.
that part of it is that clear brand promise. And then the other is that Ainsley readers don't cross back to Zoe that often. And that's keeping that brand, those riskier books, tighter, which, I mean, that's good all around.
Yeah. And we kind of talked about before we went live, we were talking about algorithms. And I've also seen a movement with people finding your ideal reader. Some of the algorithms will show them books like this. And so having a pen name can sometimes help. You don't want sweet contemporary romance readers seeing your Ainsley books because they are a different experience. And so did you have that in mind when you were making the choice?
Yeah. See, the thing is that inside the pages of a Zoe York book, they're pretty high heat, there's explicit content, but you build up to it. And once you finish that book, then I don't mind them knowing that I'm also Ainsley. If they come to my
Right.
website, they're invested enough that I don't mind them then knowing about Ainsley. But when I am doing that cold capture of a small town romance reader, like, for example, with a Bookbub, I don't necessarily want them to see me right off the hop at that point.
Yeah. One of the most common questions we get, just like when we were doing Ask Us Anything, and just from the comments we get as we're doing these interviews, is about marketing. And so I'd love to hear like what marketing techniques you've used over time. You mentioned Bookbub. What are your thoughts on Bookbub? What other marketing efforts are you making to find the new readers out there?
So I really like free first in series, probably most favorite. And so Bookbub's a big partner in that, but just in general, consistently having a free book, and it doesn't have to be the same book. I like to go up and down a series. Obviously not my most recent release, and you want to, because you want to have sell through. So if you have
Right.
8-book series, I will go free, like temporarily free book 1s, 2, 3, 4, and 5, so that I at least have sell through to 6, 7, 8. So I really like free first in series, paid or just passive on the retailers. I also like working directly with the retailers, letting them know this is the series that I have. This book has never been free before. Is there any opportunity to promote that? Hobo has a really awesome set of promotional opportunities, and Apple is really great about that too. And so,
Yeah,
and I
they
believe
are.
Nook presses too, but Apple and I focus my energy.
Yeah,
So
with Nook, they just don't have as many
that's another
places
really
to
good thing that I don't
advertise.
see enough authors doing.
Mhm. I agree. Like, it can be hard to find who
Yeah,
to
I
talk
see.
to promote something.
Yeah, and other than Bookbub, I don't do a lot of paid advertising. I do some cost per click advertising, like on Facebook, and sometimes Amazon, but usually not, because I don't find it that effective. The other big marketing thing that I like to do is cross promotion with other authors.
Yeah, that's a great one. What sort of cross promotions have you participated in with authors?
So one great tool because some people are really down on box sets, but I would say that a box set with other authors was effective in 2014, and I think it's still effective in 2020. So
Yeah,
cross promotional box sets where you each put in a backlist title and make the whole thing free. Even I don't like novel length novella new material, and you sell that for a limited period of time. That's awesome. I've done that a bunch of times. But also have a website that I own for the express purpose of pushing a list of free books a couple of times a year.
oh, excellent.
That's it. The domain
Mhm.
doesn't do anything else. Post a list of free books on the sellers. They don't buy from the website. It's literally just a landing page. And we push that out to our newsletters and have huge lift a couple of times a year. So what does that cost? That costs the domain name and a bunch of your time for, mail merging the data.
That's excellent. I know authors can sometimes be put off by the idea of free and giving away something that they may have worked years on. Um, but it's such an effective marketing technique. And the thought isn't I'm giving away this book away for free. It's that I'm using this to attract others to the rest of the series and sell a lot more books. When Drafted Digital ran the numbers a year or two ago, we found that like our series that had a free first in series outsold in both units and actual money coming in, a series that didn't have a free first in series by about like 3-1. So it's a really effective marketing technique. It looks like Zoe has fallen off. I'm sure she'll reconnect here in just a second. Unfortunately, doing these live, we sometimes have hiccups. But once she gets back on, I will go ahead and add her back into the stream. Want to thank everyone that is here live, and for all of you that are that will be adding or watching this later. Thank you so much for joining us. Zoe's back. Sorry that you fell off there for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry. I think that my video is starting to lag or something.
Oh, no worries.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good, you're good. All right. Well, so we talked about series. You mentioned bundles, and you were talking about multi-author bundles. want to delve into that more, because I think I'm always encouraging people to make bundles, because it gives you another product to sell. It gives you a different price point, because bundles are going to be priced higher than a single book. So with multi-author ones, those are great. And do you bundle your series together? And if so, like, what is your strategy with that? Are you bundling like 3 together? Or are you bundling the whole series?
Yeah, so I bundle my books. I do bundle my books. I bundle them when I'm direct on Kobo. I don't know if I should say that.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
So I have some bundles of my books. I actually have that's going to have a Bookbub next week. So the regular $9.99, and they are linked as a series. So there's 3 novellas in each box set. If someone wants to go look at them, it's just will look me up and then look for the seal box sets. But the
Gotcha.
Kiss for a Seal, $99. I've used Draft to Digital. Digital press promotion schedule that. So that's a good way to bundle together material that individually is not long enough to get a Bookbub on its own. So that's one way that I use box sets. And then the other way is on Kobo, because they have the 40% off box set specials not every single month, most months. A bundle that's like amazing way. New reader, otherwise, once they've read an entire hook.
Yeah, bundles. The other neat thing about bundles that, like, people who are just exclusive on Amazon, or maybe there's focus on Amazon, will worry about, like, if you're over $9.99 with Amazon, you get paid less. With Kobo and with Draft to Digital, you can have a higher price range and still get paid the same amount. So do you do pre-orders? I know we talk a lot about some of the advice we give new authors is that you should be using pre-orders. Is that part of your strategy for selling your books? Sorry, are you still there? Sorry about that. We lost Zoe again. Yeah, internet connection with everyone streaming nowadays is such an issue. I'm gonna go ahead and see in the comments. Just a reminder, at the 30-minute mark or so we will start taking questions from the audience. But if you have them already, go ahead and start throwing them in the comments, and we will handle those as soon as we can. I know as we're talking about bundles, she mentioned that Kobo has some promotions around bundles. We have the same thing happen with Barnes & Noble. They have promotions that are specifically for bundles. Apple runs some of their promotions require bundles. And so just having these different formats is something that is going to help you to get more marketing opportunities. And Zoe's back.
I'm back. I'm on my computer now because my phone was being useless. So the lighting isn't as good, but you should be able to hear me now.
Good. So I just asked you about pre-orders. Are they something that's a part of your strategy?
Yes. And again, like the series length, I think that the function of a pre-order works better on some retailers than others, like Apple. And this really comes down to, as an author, you want to have all of the different reading apps on your device so that you can experience that what it's like as a reader. So for example, if you have an iDevice and you download the Books app, start reading a couple of books in a series, and you'll realize that the bookshelf shows you upcoming pre-orders in that series. They ghost behind the books that you're currently reading. It's amazing. So Apple is by far the most important retailer in terms of having pre-orders. So even if you don't put a pre-order, and I distribute all of my books to Apple through Draft to Digital, and that's because I'm Canadian and I don't have an LLC or a doing business as account. So when I started, Draft to Digital was a really important partner in terms of setting up that like seller name as being a publisher name and not like my legal name. And then, in the past when I've released Ainsley Booth books and they've been slightly controversial, Draft to Digital is a very good partner in communicating back and forth with Apple, like the best way to present those on the retailer, storefront and that sort of thing. So I really love Draft to Digital and their relationship with Apple. I also love that you can put up a pre-order on Apple through D2D without an asset, without a cover, without any blurb. Like I had a book, it's coming out next month, but I had an Ainsley Booth book up that I put up last year with it had the title, but it didn't have a cover at the start. And the blurb was, "This is Jason's book." That's it. And it started accumulating pre-orders based on that alone, because it was late. It was book 5 in a series, and people who had read book 1 knew they wanted Jason's book. And at that point, that's the only audience I'm looking to grab, right? With that early pre-order. The blurb, the cover, that helps, grab the other people, like the new to me readers. But people who want Jason's book at the point of reading book 2 and 3, which came out then, book 4 came out last year. I want them, as when they finish reading book 4, if book 4 is the most recent book, I want them to pre-order book 5 as soon as they're done book 4. If you don't have that pre-order up, then that's a possible end to that reader-author relationship. Yeah, I have a lot of strong feelings about pre-order.
That moment, once they finish the book, it's the moment they're most connected to you. Because if they do finish the book, period, that means that you did a good enough job. Like they didn't stop the book. And so having another product to sell them right then and there is the most likely time you're going to sell it. You mentioned that Apple shows them the pre-orders, like when you see the series. Apple let us know just recently they're starting to notify readers when a new book comes out in a series that they bought before. So that's very exciting. At the end of Kobo, if you finish a book on Kobo, they give you a link to the next in series. So it's important, like if you have that pre-order, the sooner you can get it out, the better. I would say our average is somewhere around 90 days for pre-orders, but you can go longer than that. We've had authors put up a book a year in advance and sell 1,000 copies, which is just mind-boggling to people. But we're all busy, and so we know we want the book, and we don't want to forget about it later. So when someone pre-orders your book, it's just delivered to their book the day of.
And it's not charged until then either, right? Which is, I think that a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of worry about that commitment. And you can, pre-order dates can be moved because you haven't taken anybody's money. So don't worry about that. The other thing, but like the 90 days out, it is kind of the most common. For a long time, that was the duration that Amazon allowed for pre-order. But now I think all the retailers allow a year. So I would encourage people to go longer than that 90 days, because I think that there is, definitely you want to have it set up by the time, the book previous to it in the series goes live. But if you, it can be a trap to fall into where you feel like you must release a book every 90 days because you want to have that pre-order set up, and you have this 90-day calendar in your head. Over time, for most people, not everybody, but for most people, that's not super sustainable. So I would encourage people to think about, but building in some buffer time. And if you finish the book early, then you can kind of work ahead a little bit for those times when suddenly you can't release a book as frequently as you have in the past.
Yeah. We've definitely seen authors are free to move a book back when they need to, because sometimes life gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can move a book forward as well. And all the retailers are pretty generous about that. Amazon has they only let you move a book around so many times a year. But it's just something to keep in mind. You mentioned, go ahead.
On the Amazon front, and this is, I really like, just because I know that this is going on YouTube and will live forever, so please don't quote me on this down the road, but for those who are watching live, right now in this period of unprecedented concern in the world, Amazon has lifted their restrictions about how many times you can move a pre-order. Ask me how I know. I've moved a pre-order a few times in this period of global pandemic. So for a limited period of time, Amazon is lifting that. And I think that depending on the customer feedback, because Amazon's a customer-driven company, depending on customer feedback, if they don't get a lot of pushback from that, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep that lifted, at least for authors who have demonstrated reliability in terms of delivering those assets.
Yeah, I mean, Apple's very customer focused as well, and they've always let people move things around as much as they want. And like we've had authors that have moved things a little bit obsessively, where they don't mind if you move something back a month. If you move something back every week, a week at a time, that's when customers start complaining. So
because they get a notification, right?
Yeah.
So if you I've seen. And I'll talk about myself. So I have moved a pre-order multiple times, but it's better to move it once 3 months out rather than move it out a month, move it out a month, move it out a month. Because that's 3. You think about that customer experience. Again, if you have the device, right? And you go in, if you want to know how pre-orders work, pre-order some books and see what that experience is like. You'll get a notification when you have pre-ordered it. You get a notification every time the pre-order changes. So if you're constantly having a retailer send out a notice saying and they use the language like the publisher has moved it back, that's on you. So do that really carefully. One big jump is better than a couple of short hops.
I totally agree. So one of the things you mentioned, we have people fill out a form when we ask them on the show. You mentioned long-term stability. And so what moves as an author and a publisher have you made with long-term sustainability in mind, as opposed to some of the things you see other authors that have done over the years?
Yeah. So for me, I used to work at a university and I was laid off. My position was eliminated and I was laid off and I was given a package. And so that package, I saw it as an opportunity to pivot to writing full time. But I'm a mom. I wanted to be able to support my family.
Right.
So for me, my goal in publishing has always been to replace and then some that full-time income from the university, which means that I want a monthly paycheck, it's not exactly like that in publishing. There are more peaks and valleys, but I wanted stability. And I knew that backlist sales could give me that stability. So I never think of a new release as income. A new release, that spike of sales you get on a new release, that's a bonus. The income is what I get in between releases from what I can generate out of my backlist. So if that dips, and sometimes it does, look around. So, you're not able to have new releases and you go 6 or 8 months in between new releases and your income dips. The lowest point that it drops to, that's what your backlist is capable of producing as income, right? And you can, and there are things you can do to drive that up, to create that kind of baseline that's more stable. Things like writing in series, being willing to promote. So many people are resistant to the idea of making a book free. I never make a book free out of the goodness of my heart to give it to people. I make a book free because there's profit in that, because I earn more on that whole series than I do before it's free, right? That's the single reason why I do it.
So, and advertise the hell out of it when you have it available for free. take advantage of that. And you don't have
Yeah.
to keep it free all the time.
Yeah, and don't beat yourself up. Like I have also like wasted marketing opportunities because I was
Yeah.
depressed or busy or on deadline. Like you also kind of want to plan. One thing that I like to do, and I show this on my YouTube channel, is I like to grid out a 12-month marketing plan. And the month before a release is a very bad month for me to do backlist marketing because I'm busy. I'm on deadline. I'm focused on that new release. So be really aware of kind of the best times in your calendar to really give it a freebie your all, and other times when, you know, your backlist is just going to coast. So backlist income potential is the biggest part of stability, I think. And, you know, I think it's something that people who are hybrid authors who are coming from traditional publishing, they don't get that because trad publishing is so front list focused. They're so focused on hit, hit, hit. And the thing is that hits are important as indies too, right? They drive us up to the next plateau. They find us new readers. But in between those hits, your backlist is what can really give you that like income. That it's the difference between I'm a writer and I'm a writer, it's my job.
Yeah. I know for traditional, a lot of their profits over the last few years have been from backlist and perennial, even though they're not really focusing on and have very little marketing efforts. There's a handful of players like Open Road Media bought up a bunch of backlist titles and is doing a great job of advertising them. But for indies, it's such an opportunity because traditional just doesn't take it seriously.
Yeah.
So real quick before we start taking some questions from the audience, one to share, you can check out Zoe at zoeyork.com. Do you have, what's the name of your YouTube channel?
Zoe York Writes is where I am everywhere on the internet. So youtube.com/Zoe York Writes, or just search for Zoe York on YouTube. I think I come up. I'm also Zoe York Writes on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Excellent. So Charles asked, hello, any tips you can share as to what works for you on Bookbub? And I think most of the time when you've been talking about Bookbub, you've been talking about the daily featured deal.
Yeah.
But can you talk about that? And do you use the other types of Bookbub ads?
I do. So I like the featured deal best. I like free way better than 99 cents. 99 cents is more expensive. And you move fewer units. And for me, like we were talking about that kind of long-term stability, for me, the total number of books that are out there in the world, you know, if I can move 30,000 free units or 2,000 paid units, well, there's a difference of 28,000 copies of my books that are out there in the world. But next week I'm doing a 99 cent feature deal because that's what they gave me. So my tips for Bookbub is apply for everything. I always start with my free books. I cycle through them. They say no. They say no to me all the time. Like all the time. And I really want, if you are somebody who gets no from Bookbub a lot, that's okay. Me too. Just keep asking them. Like read the whole email, see what it says. If it says you can't, don't submit this book again for 4 weeks, that's literally what that means. So you move on to the next book, right? So I go free, free, free. If they say no to all my freebies, or if I've recently run one so I can't ask for it again, then I move to a different freebie. Like I'll do a temporary freebie, book 2 or 3 in a series if it stands alone. And then I go to the 99 cent deals, which this is my first 99 cent box set. I'm really excited about it. I've heard a lot of really good things about 99 cent box sets. So that's next week. I'm happy to report back. I'll report back probably on YouTube.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I do free 99 cents. And you want sell-through on like whichever book you give them, either free or 99 cents, you want to have multiple books to sell through. You will see more sell through obviously on the free. That's where you make your Bookbub money back. The other things I've done with Bookbub is I've done their featured new release, which is it has a hefty price tag, but so a good business term is ROI, return on investment. It had a positive ROI for me. So I think I recommend it, but I've only done it once, so I don't have a ton of data. I also, with a caveat, I do like their pre-order pushes, as long as a book is priced high enough to get you that positive ROI. Those are based on how many followers you have. So I think that if you have less than 10,000 followers, it's probably worthwhile. Over 10,000 followers, you might not actually. It's ironic that the more followers you have, the more expensive that one costs. And I'm not sure it converts. I have under 10,000 followers, and my data has been good, but I have friends who are like less. They're less on it. The other thing that I like, and I see a lot, is I really like Bookbub reviews, and this is free. You can get readers. You can just mention to readers, hey, do you know you can review my books on Bookbub? I get emails every single day from Bookbub. Someone's recommended your book. Someone's recommended your book. And that's because I have that Bookbub link on my website.
Oh, that's excellent. I didn't even realize they had that. And so you're just asking people to do, like, the reviews, something people forget to do. But
so reviews on retailers are good, but reviews on Bookbub are great too, because Bookbub will look at those reviews when considering whether or not to give you a featured deal.
That's excellent. With you mentioned the ROI angle, and I know we always recommend Bookbub because it's been at least the most effective thing that we've seen for authors who are wide. It is the daily deals are pricey. However, the ROI, you always make more money. Like I can't think of anyone I've talked to at a conference who has lost money on a Bookbub deal. So if I spend $1 to make $1.20, I will do that every day of the week because you're still making more money.
So here I have a story, because I am a huge Bookbub fan, but I did lose money once on a Bookbub feature deal. And here's what happened. I broke my metadata connection between my books.
Oh, no.
I tried to change the series numbering, and I did it too soon, too close to the Bookbub feature deal, and Amazon disconnected all the books. So that free book on Amazon, when you clicked on it, had no other books in the series connected. And this is where, like, we talked a little bit about where trad publishing, they haven't caught on to some of the indie tricks. There is a shocking number of trad published books that do not have correct metadata connection between their books in a series. And so those books look like complete standalones on the retailer. In the digital marketplace, metadata connection is absolutely everything. Make sure yours is tight before you apply for a Bookbub, and don't change it.
Our operations team in the background is always working with the retailers to make sure our metadata is showing up correctly, to make sure series are linked. Because like Apple doesn't automatically link up series in the way some of the other retailers do. You have to get a series approved before they make some of the links. And so it's really important. You mentioned earlier, if you typically only read on one platform, try the other platforms out, get to know them. Like, you're going to learn what types of advertising they offer. We're also going to learn what the experience is and how readers are finding you. And that is just so important. We had another question from Charles. Also, what is the best way to handle controversial content with stores like Apple? I've just been flat out rejected at times.
Yeah, so you might not like my answer, Charles, but it's probably change up some of that content. So our retailer partners, they have their rules. Their rules are usually pretty clear. And if we bump up to them, then we have to make it really clear in the content how we are not crossing that line. So, like, for example, with one of my books, I have a book called Booty Call. And it got bumped back from Apple because in the first chapter, this was not deliberate on my part, but it accidentally made the heroine sound underage because she was celebrating a birthday. And I think I used the phrase like now of age or something like that. But she's 20 turning 21, not 17 turning 18. And so when that was flagged for me, I went in and I just added the fact that she was 20 and it was her 21st birthday. So like some people kind of bristle at that, but I feel like, we have these rules for a reason, and we can all see content that egregiously crosses the line. I want to be clear to my retailer partners that my content is not that, and I'm happy to clarify it, as much as is required. So I'm happy to change content, or go exclusively with a retailer who doesn't have a problem with that content. But I don't like that latter choice. I like to just work within their rules. And I think that as long as you properly categorize your books, then those rules, there is a place like Apple's actually been a really good partner as somebody who writes erotic romance. I don't feel like that is problematic at Apple at all, as long as I properly put it in that category.
Yeah. And they're great about giving feedback. And we find that like when we do have problems with other retailers or library systems, if Apple is approved of it, then generally they'll be like, oh yeah, because Apple does care about their store and monitors it a lot more than some of the other retailers. And so I agree. Just like when Apple asks you to do something, like it's not them. They're not doing it out of malice. They're doing it because they know how their customer wants to see this, and they want to make sure they don't have any really problematic material in their catalog.
And at least they'll tell you what the problem is, because if Amazon decides that something has violated their rules, you're never going to find out what it is. I once went. I have a I have a Navy SEAL book called Fall Fast. And it got banned from Amazon. This was years ago now, 2015. It got banned from Amazon. And I could not understand why. It's a really cute story about a Navy SEAL and a flight attendant who are stranded at O'Hare Airport. Like literally, I could not figure it out. It was a keyword. And it took me weeks of back and forth and really patiently explaining all of I'm a good partner. And why don't you I don't, is it? And I changed the cover. I changed the blurb. And finally somebody I don't know whether or not they should have told me this, because most people say, oh, you never find out. But finally they said and I don't even remember what the keyword was, but it was innocuous. But the bot had grabbed it and said, this is inappropriately too erotic or something. And it was quite the journey to get that book republished. But if you keep persistently and politely communicating that you want to get the story right and you want to work within the rules, then retailers will help you get there, as long as you don't lose it on them. Yeah.
Keeping in the whole Apple content stuff, just an observation. I've seen things from trad publishers that cross a lot of lines. We've seen that too. I will tell a story that we had a book that got removed temporarily, and I pointed out that there was a book by a traditional publisher that had the same tropes, the same issue, and they banned that book. And so they do treat traditional publishers the same way as indie. One of the things I love about Apple is they've been agnostic to source. And so regardless if you are a Penguin Random House author or an author that is independent, Apple's giving you a fair treatment. And so, sometimes people will say, well, there are books like Lolita that have underage. They don't compare perennial classics in the same way that they do new books. And it's never going to happen.
As somebody who is an erotic romance author and a romance author, and who I read lit fic and I read romance, those are not the same thing. And
exactly.
You really can't, there's a book right now, a relatively new book, I think it came out earlier this year, called Dark Vanessa, My Dark Vanessa, something like that, My Dear Vanessa. And it is a complicated tale about a young woman who has an affair with an older man. And as a woman, when she's older, when she's of age, she realizes how inappropriate it was. That is not the same as an age gap May December romance. It's not. Yep. And if we pretend that it is, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We don't look like professional partners to those retailers.
Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, be polite and consistent and just ask. But if you're rude and yelling at them, they aren't going to help you. Yeah. Alyssa says, can you give us any insight into how you got such a loyal base? Is that just Apple demographics, mailing lists, popcorn levels of addictive writing?
I'm not sure it's the last one. So, yeah, so mailing list, definitely my mailing list. I started it on day one. I know, and I love them, but I know many writers who don't have mailing lists, like people who have 20 books out and don't have mailing lists, or they collect names but they don't actually send emails out. So the term newsletter is kind of overwhelming. You don't need to create newsletter content. You're just sending an email to people who have asked you to send them email. That's the dynamic. That's it. That's all you're doing. So mailing list with a sign up, preferably at the front of your book and at the back of your book, with a clear call to action. Like if you want to be on my VIP email list, please sign up here and I'll let you know every time I have a sale or a new release. And then send them an email every time you have a sale or a new release, because literally that's what they've asked you to do. Right? So that's huge. That carries your readers forward, but also collecting them on social media and then creating social media content. That's overwhelming, but I promise it's not. Creating a social media spot, a space that reinforces what your books are about. So for example, I have a Facebook reader group and it's not huge. It has like maybe 1,500 readers in it. But in that space, for those 1,500 loyal readers, I am constantly talking about Pine Harbor, and I am constantly talking about Gavin Strong, who is like the fictional prime minister in my Frisky Beaver series. The town of Pine Harbor and the person of Gavin Strong are real in that group. And that carries those readers, it keeps them engaged and it carries them forward in between, or keeps them with me in between releases.
And that is what they're coming there for, is to hear more about those characters they love.
Yeah. Instagram is a really good place to do that too, right? Because Instagram is all about the aesthetic. So you could, if you don't know what you would post, literally just post. You know who's really good at this? Jillian Neal. She just this morning on her Instagram, she posted a picture of a field with like a road running through it. And she said something about like, this is memories of like the town. And I felt that like in my chest.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So stuff like that. I really like. Jillian's Instagram is a good one to follow.
Lindsay Burke, also, I don't know if you follow her, but she writes fantasy, she writes sci-fi, and she writes fantasy. But for fantasy, like her readers now are always like sending her on Twitter or social media dragon related stuff. So getting, your fans following you and engaging you just randomly on stuff that is also your brand is amazing.
Penny Reed and Beards is another really great one. And somebody who's really good, because some people talk about like Instagram, but Twitter is a place where you can just create and gather people. Rebecca Weatherspoon and Alicia Ray are both of them are really great on Twitter for just being themselves, and people follow them and then buy their books because they make that persona. It's not about warts and all putting yourself out there on the internet. It's about choosing to be a marketing manager for a persona, right? And you happen to be that persona, but just figure out who that writer persona is and then do the best job you can for them, the job that you would want someone to do if you were paying them to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we're at time today. So Zoe, thank you so much for being with us. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me.
For all of you that joined us live, thank you for being here. For those of you seeing this after the fact, please leave a review, like, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, because we are producing content like this regularly and just get a chance to hear from some of the top authors out there and some of the industry people. So it's just a lot of fun to be able to host these, and we thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day, everyone.